So what we're going to be talking about today is macros, what they are, what they're used for, and what we're going to be using them for. So what we're going to be doing today is decoding these two rings of data, this yellow ring and this blue ring. We're going to create a function that tells the computer to shift every data value in the cells associated with the yellow ring one cell to the left. Then we're going to create a macro that tells the blue cells to do the same thing similarly, but in a clockwise right-hand direction. Then we're going to create one more macro that actually throws the two together, and the last macro will run the first macro 3 times, run the second macro 3 times, effectively shifting every cell in those values 3 cells in the respective directions. And we should decode this ring and see exactly what's going on right here. The first thing we're going to do before all that is explain macros. So macro is a pre-recorded set of instructions that is going to tell the computer to do things that the user may not want to repeat or create redundancies. It really slows down the workflow. If you can create a macro, do the same thing over and over again, you get things done a lot quicker, a lot more efficiently. We're going to create a macro first to copy this data down to the new table with the similar colors so that we can practice there without messing it up and forgetting where everything goes and potentially ruining our final message. So to start recording a macro, you're going to go to the View tab, look up at the top right where you see a drop-down menu for macros, and click Record. From there, we simply copy and paste the cells we want to the new positions that we want. When we hit the macros drop-down menu again, we can see the option to stop recording. This brings me to absolute and relative references, which is the other option you see from the drop-down menu. With relative references, the macro is going to reference the position or the positional difference between the two cells, the input of the macro and the output of the macro. With absolute references, the macro is going to assign the output to a specific cell or set of cells, and similar with finding its input as well, A1, A2, A3. So now that we've created that macro, we're going to go ahead and use it to make sure we get a solid copy down to the new table. And again, with absolute references on, once we have that, depending on how we set up the macro, we could put our cursor or highlight any number of cells, and when we run it, it will copy and paste them to that table, regardless of whatever was in them or where we selected. Always important to know what kind of references you're using before you start writing your macros. Now that we're good on that, we can proceed to start creating the macro to actually shift the values in the yellow ring one position counterclockwise. What we do is we create a placeholder cell off to the left, and we initially move the first cell into it while we work, and it just like a daisy chain after that, every cell value is bumped down to replace the sort of vacuum that A created. And as we get around the ring, as everything shifts, eventually we will end up bringing that A down to where the B is now. So that is probably the only really important thing to remember besides starting it and ending the loop is what to do with that value you put in the placeholder cell, and that's going to be just to copy and paste it down to where it would have shifted had it not been taken out of its ring formation. We're going to end up doing the same thing with the blue, just in the opposite direction. So really make sure before you start recording these macros that you've got your directions right. Otherwise, if you're shifting them the same way, or if you're shifting them opposite ways from what they need to be, you're not going to get your messages or any kind of thing like this when you're trying to use decoder rings or any similar objective. Now that they're both done, what we actually want to do is begin recording the final macro, which is going to tie it all together. We will run the first macro 3 times while recording. We'll run the second macro 3 times recording. And we'll have 3 full rotations in both rings to opposite directions at the end of recording the macro. And as you can already see, it's starting to decode a message based on this custom workbook that we're using here. And it's going to say good job when all is said and done. So we know that the values that we've shifted them in the right places to produce a desired response. It's going to be very difficult when you're not using your references right, or if you're not using copy and paste. If you're inputting the values manually, it's only going to work once with absolute references because it's just going to place them where they already are a second time. We run it now. We see that it works. We've got our good job, our complete macro. And as you're doing these, you can name them and assign them to hotkeys accordingly. So it was real fun today to go ahead and give you all some macro information, cool little things you can do. They're also very widely used in gaming. A little bit about myself. My name is William Sanders. I'm a 26-year-old sophomore at Georgia State University, and I'll leave you with a joke. Have you heard about the new restaurant on Mars? Because the food is great, but the atmosphere is absolutely terrible. Y'all have a good one and hope to give you more in the future.